y'all, thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to check out another one of my videos, or if you're new around here, hello and welcome. Today is one of my favorite type of videos that we're going to be diving into. It is my Palette Palooza Countdown review series. If you're new around here, first of all, hello and welcome. My name is Katie Marie. But in today's video, I'm going to take the 10 most recent palettes that I've been testing and trying out over the past couple weeks, and I'm going to rank them and review them from the worst or my least favorite all the way up to the very best palette that stood out of the 10 most recent palettes that I tried. I got this idea from Annette over at Annette's Makeup Corner. She does this as well. After she has a bunch of palettes, she'll go ahead and rank them all in order, and then she reviews them as she goes along. And I love that type of format for reviewing my palettes, so that's what I like to sit down and do. And I have 10 palettes. This video is going to be a little bit different because they're not all eyeshadow palettes, but they are all palettes. So we'll get into it in a minute. But yeah, today I'm going to be reviewing a bunch of new palettes. And if you are new to these videos, again, just want to let you guys know kind of what to expect. Not only am I going to rank them in order just to make it a little bit more fun and review them, but I'm also going to include in the video all the eye looks that I created while testing the palette or using the palette. I'll include swatches of all the palettes so you guys can see how they just do finger swatches on my arms, and then I'll also include any little quick reels that I might have put over on my Instagram account. So if you like to see those type of things, I'll stick them in as I am talking and going along, just to give you guys a little bit more information about the palettes and kind of what I did with them and that sort of thing. So with that intro out of the way, let's just go ahead and jump right into it. So as I said, not all of them are eyeshadow palettes, and the number 10 here coming in the countdown is going to be a face palette because I did get the Lunar Beauty mystery box and they included the face palette. So coming in at number 10 is going to be the Lunar Beauty Outer Dimensions. Now I do want to be very clear in saying that this is not coming in at number 10 because of quality, because I do think the quality is nice, both of the actual formula of the products, but also the packaging. Like Lunar Beauty does exceptional packaging. I feel like this is a little mesmerizing just to stare at the screen and just watch it, all the colors. It's so beautiful. It's very well done. There's a nice weight to the packaging. And then inside, I did think the quality of them was very nice. I would title these more of like a buildable type of formula, but I do think that's like a good buildable, like with face products especially. You don't want them to be too intense and pigmented, or just like right off the bat, you put a little on and it's like, oh my goodness, there's all the pigment, but it's not blending. So I found these very easy to work with, but the reason I'm deciding to bring it in right at the bottom of this countdown is mainly because whenever I use this, I really only use these two colors. And that's it. So that's 2 shades out of 8, 10. 2 shades out of 10. And so that's the biggest reason I'm putting it at number 10, just because for me personally, knowing how many I use out of this and you know how big of a palette is, it's not worth it for me personally to, I mean, honestly, keep this in my collection. I feel like it's big and bulky for me to just use 2. I never really experimented with these shades over here, not because I didn't want to, but because I never really thought to. By the time I think, oh yeah, I'm ready to do my contour, I'd already set my face. So I never thought to. I never used these 2 darker colors. Actually, I think there was one time I did an eye look using this palette, and I did use the darkest shade to go right against my lash line because I was making a winged out kind of smoky liner look. But anyway, that was the only time. For my face, I never used these 2. And then like I said, I use mainly these 2, and every now and then I would bring this into it if I got a little bit too much of this, because this is, like I said, it's a buildable formula where it's not like too crazy, but it's still got a good amount of pigment. And for me and my skin tone, I use these shades on my face today, and that's all I use just because it just works for my skin tone. So if you are a makeup artist, or if you're someone who does, you know, makeup on other people a lot, and you're someone who likes to kind of play on both sides of this palette as well, then I think it might be worth it. I still would say wait for a sale because I'm someone who always says wait for a sale, but then it would be more worth it to you to own this palette. But for me, I just feel like I said, it's a little bit of a waste because I'm only using 2 out of all the shades in here. So that's why I decided to put it right at number 10. I don't think I really have any demos to show you except for the eye look that I did using this palette, because that was, I mean, I didn't do any eye looks other than that. And on my face, I mean, I was using it a lot the past month or so, so you guys have seen it a lot in videos, but I don't have a lot of demonstrations to show you. But overall, it's nice. The quality is there, but for me in my collection, it just doesn't, I don't really see it sticking around long or serving a purpose. So for me, that's why it's coming in at number 10. Alright, next up in my countdown, it's going to be the Lunar Beauty Eternal Eclipse palette. This palette I really wanted to love, and part of the reason it's getting low in this countdown is because it is a neutral palette, but the other part of me that is why it's getting low is because I wasn't overall thoroughly impressed with this palette as a whole when it comes to formula. I did a very gray-black look, and I wasn't really happy with the way the gray was blending out for me. I just felt like no matter how much I was trying, you know, different ways I was using it, the gray just, in my eyes, looked a little patchy. Now, maybe that's how I should expect any gray eyeshadow. I already purchased another gray theme palette, like a gray monochromatic theme palette, because I want to try more gray eyeshadow to get more familiar with it, because anytime I have used grays, I feel like that's always my complaint, is that they look patchy or they look like they're skipping on my eyes. So maybe that's just how grays are, but I wasn't crazy about that kind of grayish look. I think I did that during a live on my channel, so I'll leave that linked in the description box or up here if you want to see it. But then besides that, while I thought the quality of the mattes were really nice, the mattes were also incredibly repetitive for me. Like, even though there was some variety with the shimmers, when it came to like what I wanted to do to pair with the shimmers, I felt like this row, it was just very boring for me. Like, quality wise, they weren't bad. I didn't think they were terrible. I liked how they blended out. I didn't have a lot of issues with blending them. I thought they blended nicely together, but I just wasn't overall very excited whenever I had to reach for this palette. This was a palette I kept for like on the weekends if I know I was gonna go get together with friends or family, or going to the church service and I wanted to have a very neutral, natural look. This is the palette I would reach for, but it definitely wasn't a palette I was like excited to go grab, or a palette that I was like, oh, let me see what I can create in this palette. So for me, while I thought this might be a neutral palette that I could get down with, it didn't really end up being all that. The shimmers had a couple different formulas in it, and overall I felt like the shimmers as a majority were a little tricky to pick up with a brush, or they were very chunky. Like, this was very chunky and like it picked up okay with a brush, but it just got a mess everywhere. I think I used that in my live, so I wasn't crazy about that. And then the other ones that are easier and not like flaky are just difficult to pick up with a brush or even like your finger. I just felt like I had to fight with it to try and get it up, and then not only get it up off out of the pan, but then on my eyes. It's just not my preferred formula. I feel like it's a little bit tricky and difficult to pick up, and then when you actually use them on your eyes, they're nothing like incredibly sparkly, they're nothing incredibly metallic, they're just a nice shimmer. So that's kind of why I was like, overall, when I was using it and playing with it, anytime I created a look, like, I don't think the looks were terrible, they just, I don't know, weren't my speed, and they weren't a type of neutral look that I was super excited to wear. They were just a type of neutral look that I wore that day. You know, that's kind of like my viewpoint of it. There were a couple formulas that I actually thought were really nice and weren't that tricky to pick up, like this gray I thought was nice and easy to pick up. Again, nothing like super sparkly or metallic, it's just a nice shimmer. So overall, that's why this palette is just okay. And honestly, like, sitting here looking at it, I know this palette isn't going to last very long in my collection because it's just not my type of neutral palette. It's not a neutral palette that I thought was anything special, or a type of neutral palette that I was actually excited to create looks over. It's just, I don't know, I just was not impressed, so I don't anticipate holding on to this palette for very long. Okay, next up is going to be another face palette, and also from Lunar Beauty. Now, they're not coming in at the bottom because they're terrible, 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 but out of all the palettes, most of them are eyeshadow palettes. I love eyeshadow palettes, so hence why it's coming in a little low when it comes to face palettes. If you've been around here a while, you guys know face palettes aren't my specialty, so hence why it's just, in my eyes, when I'm ranking palettes, they're coming in at the bottom. But anyway, this is the Moon Prism blush palette, and this palette got higher than the contour palette because I actually used all the shades in here on my face at some point, except, no, yeah, I used all of them because I even touched this to my face a little bit. It's more of a shimmery type of glowy blush, but I did use it one day. You guys should be proud of me, but I have been playing around in this a lot, and I do like it. And because of the fact that I used all 6 shades at some point or another during the past couple months ever since I got it, that's why I'm like, like, I actually get a good amount of decent use out of this, and I'm super happy about that. The quality of these blushes are very pigmented, but they're not like a super pigmented powdery type of blush. They are a very, I would call it almost like a thin layer type of pigmented blush where, you know, you press into it and it's not like you get a ton of powder on your brush, but when you go and apply it, it's very pigmented. So you definitely, for my complexion, I had to be very careful because I feel like there's a couple times, even going into like this color or this color, that they're so pigmented. If I got too much on my brush, and this is coming from someone who doesn't like a lot of blush, but if I got too much and I went and put it on, I was like, oh my goodness, that's a lot of color, and I would kind of blend it out. So I was someone who appreciated the formula of this because I found it very easy to get that perfect kind of middle ground where it's like, yes, I see a blush to my cheeks, but it's nothing too crazy where I feel like clown cheeks. So I was very happy with this formula. I was very happy with the selection of shadows in here as well when it comes to colors for blush. I wouldn't mind one of them, instead of being like so heavy on the pinky tones with like these in here and even this and that, I wouldn't mind one of them to be more orangey leaning. You do get more of a bronzy tone in here, which I like, but I don't know, I feel like between these two, you could have taken one out and put like a more orangey tone. This is a little peachy, but it doesn't really bring the orange. I don't know. It's just something that I feel like would have added to the palette and added to the versatility of the palette and how much I enjoyed using it. But I mean, this is a palette that I was very surprised. You know, I have a lot of single blushes that I could use, but I was pulling this out a lot just because I liked that I could kind of complete my look. I would reach for this palette and then I would look at it and go like, okay, what kind of goes with the face that I have going on today? Is it more pinky? Is it more of a bronzy look? Do I want more mauve or peach? That type of thing. So I love that about about this palette. So overall, very happy. I know it's not getting crazy high, but I mean, it is because, like I said, it is a face palette. So it doesn't steal my heart as much as the eyeshadow palettes do, but it definitely did impress me and I liked it a whole lot more. I was surprised than the contour palette because I love my contour and bronzing, but I just didn't use it as much. But this one, I do anticipate holding on to, and I do anticipate reaching for it. And especially if I'm going to be traveling anywhere, I like that I have one palette and I have a ton of different colors that I can work with. All right, working our way up. Now it's going to be a cake liner palette. This is from Kailav Beauty, and this is a collab with SunshineTheBee. It's called the Daydream palette, and this is a water activated liner palette. This is a fun little palette. Now, I have played around with it a good bit. I used it on my eyes today. I have enjoyed playing with it. I don't feel like I'm an expert when it comes to graphic liner though, or like water activated liners, just because I've only tried a handful of brands. I haven't tried a ton of different brands, and there's only been one specific type of formula that I tried and I was like, oh, I don't like these. For the most part, I feel like I always enjoy them, and that stays true with this one. I thought the formula was fantastic. I thought they were easy to work with. They went on very nicely. I will say they do stain. I tried to take a picture, and I don't know if the picture will turn out because I have such veiny eyelids, but the other day I wore the purple, this darkest purple, and then the lighter one, and when I washed my face, you could like literally see the exact line that I used for the dark purple, and then a little bit of the pink, but it was mostly the purple. So some of them do stain. I've seen staining with this one, which I have on my eyes today, so I'll probably see a little bit of it tonight. So some of them do stain, not all of them. I think the more the pastelish and the shimmers I didn't notice, but just something to note if you're someone who cares about staining, they will stain. But yeah, they were easy to work with, and I feel like longevity wise they lasted pretty okay. I would say they don't last the entire day. It's not that they break down or they get dry and crackly, but I do feel like, and maybe it's just the eyeshadow as I was using and wearing this month, but I feel like the eyeshadows kind of, you know, as the day progresses and it goes over it, it just kind of covers and subdues them a little bit. So before sitting down to film this video, I went over the lines again just to make sure they were popping and just being very apparent, because I did it this morning at 6 o'clock and it's now 1 o'clock, so they had just faded a little bit. But again, they're not like drying out on my face. They're not drying and crackling and like flaking off or anything like that. They just kind of get a little bit more subdued, and that's something I've seen not uncommonly when I wear a water activated liner from morning till night, because I tend to be like half day person. I'll do my makeup, and then when I sit down to film halfway through the day during nap time, I'll do something with graphic liner and then I wash it off at the end of the day and I don't notice it too much. But this one, since I did wear this a couple times all day, I did notice from morning to very late at night it would fade down a little bit. Maybe that's something that, you know, is with the formula, maybe that's something just with graphic liners in general, but as I said, I'm not an expert at it. I feel like I wished, and I don't think she did, but I wished Giovanna had gotten this product sent to her. She is a queen when it comes to graphic liner and water activated liners, and I would love to have heard her thoughts compared to how many brands, because she's tried so many different brands and she has so many different water activated liners from different brands that I feel like her review on this would be more helpful than mine. But all I can tell you is I really did enjoy this. It definitely isn't a formula that I didn't like. I thought it was nicely pigmented. All the shades, when I mixed them with water, they weren't ever too finicky to get to that perfect texture for me. It was pretty quick and easy, and overall I really did enjoy it. So I am glad to see Kailav Beauty diving into graphic liners, and I hope they come out with more of these palettes because this was a lot of fun. Alright, so next up for my number 5, directly in the middle of this countdown, I'm going to give it to the Adept Cosmetics and Heather Austin palette. This palette was a lot of fun to test, mainly because I tried my best to just get as creative as I could with the palette, because I felt like it was a bit of a challenge having so few mattes and so many shimmers, that I wanted to see how, you know, like I said, how creative I could get with it, or if I just felt like all of my looks kind of looked the same and it was very repetitive. And I thought overall I did a good job kind of making it interesting every day and trying to change it up every day, and overall for the majority of the shadows in here I really did enjoy. The standouts for me when it comes to this palette is especially this corner with the grungy colors up here in the green and this multi-chrome up here. It's so beautiful. Those three were definitely my favorite. I really did like Austin as well, just for the shine factor and how beautiful it is, but I didn't like how it applies and stuff like that, and that's one of the reasons this isn't getting crazy high in my countdown, not only for the lack of, you know, having mattes and creativity with this palette, but also because I feel like a lot of the very like blinding and sparkly sparkly and intense type of shadows were very messy and difficult to work with, specifically Passport and Austin. I just felt like they were messier than I prefer, and I know that's just me and my preferences, and I said that in my video. I did a whole video on this in 2 looks, and so I know that's it's a me thing, but it's definitely something that when a palette is very messy, it's something that, you know, I take into account, and it just sticks out in my memory as something that I didn't love about the palette. But like I said, I really did like Smith. Smith was a fun, really fun, easy, you guys can see that shift, really fun, easy shade to work with. I really did like that, and probably my second favorite of the easier shades to work with was Video Chat. I wonder if I can catch the shift on here, but it's like orange to red. It's really, really pretty as well. There's a purple to blue multi-chrome here as well. I think you can kind of see that was fun as also, but for the most part, I feel like the shimmers, those 3 multi-chromes were the standouts for me just because they were a fun multi-chrome, and no matter what you did with the mattes in your crease, you had this beautiful, very smooth, very beautiful type of multi-chrome on your lid. But when it comes to all the other ones, while, you know, these 2, as I said, were blinding and beautiful, they were just so messy and chunky, and then these 3, I just felt like they were nice. I like So Excited. It was a neat type of shimmer, but then these 2 in the middle, Hey Y'all and 0603, they were kind of underwhelming for me personally. I did 1 look with them, and they were very similar on the lid. I used both of them, and they were just very similar colors. They're very beautiful and sparkly, but compared to the rest of the shadows in the palette, I didn't feel called to, or like pulled to use them again after that look. This was my first time trying Adept Cosmetics. I thought the matte formula was very nice, and the shimmers, like I said, it's kind of, you know, depending on which one we're talking about. Some I really loved, some I didn't love as much, but it was neat to get to try Adept Cosmetics, and I understand the whole rave about their special shadows and all the sparkles they have in their formulas, because it's definitely, even though they're chunky and some are hard to, you know, use, or some are hard to pick up on a brush and that sort of thing, they're definitely very sparkly once you get them on. There's no denying that. Another reason it's not like crazy high is because while they are so sparkly, and that is definitely a, you know, plus to this palette, and I know a part of this palette and this brand that a lot of people love, they're very messy as you wear them throughout the day. So anytime I use this palette, didn't matter if I put glitter glue under it or not, they would be all over my face by the end of the day, and definitely like up into my brows. I did try a trick that I can't remember who I heard, but they said to put glitter primer underneath, and then after you complete your look, try tapping glitter primer on top of the shimmers, making sure it dries, and then going about your day. And that was definitely the best results that I got from wearing these on my face. I still got transfer up into my crease, but it wasn't like entirely in my brows or like all over my face at the end of the day, which I appreciated. So it's definitely a little tip if you're someone who doesn't like to get, you know, shimmer everywhere by the end of the day, maybe try that. But it definitely didn't like keep them in place and keep them from moving. They still moved a little bit, but not as bad as just putting glitter primer underneath, because even with glitter primer underneath, I would have sparkle like fall out on my face, in my brows, that type of thing. It just kind of got everywhere, and I know a lot of people do like that kind of like undone messy look when it comes to their eyeshadow looks, and just to have like shimmer everywhere after blending and whatnot. But me, I'm someone who likes my shimmers to be right where the cut is. I like to keep them in one spot. I don't really like them going up into my crease work, my matte crease work. I like the matte work to show. So that was another thing that stood out to me with this palette, is just, you know, not being my personal vibe, but overall quality is very nice. Like I said, I did a whole video. If you want to go over there, I compared this to a lot of palettes I have in my collection. If you're curious, you can check out that video. But overall, it's a nice palette, and I thought it is a perfect spot to put it at number 5, because it definitely stood out in my mind, you know, more than the palettes we've talked about so far. But the palettes we're going to talk about next are like more my color store, or just more versatile, or just, you know, the shimmers are a little bit easier to use, that type of thing. So putting this right here at number 5. Alright, moving right along. Next up is going to be from a colored Raine, the Wealthy Chic palette. This palette I wanted to put higher because I really did like the quality of the eyeshadows. Both the mattes and the shimmers are beautiful, but the reason I'm keeping it right here where I placed it is because I felt like I couldn't get a lot of variety out of this. I did 3 different looks, and while they were different, they weren't that different, or at least they weren't as different as I wanted them to be. For me, especially when it comes to the tinier palettes, I like there to be a lot of versatility, and for there to be no shadow that goes to waste. And with this palette, while it looks like it has a nice amount of variety, these 2 shimmers honestly look identical. I mean, there's subtle differences, I do realize that, but they're very, 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 very close when you put them on your eyes, especially if you put them together in a look, which is what I did with my first look. I'll leave that linked in the description box or up here. They looked identical on my lids. You really couldn't see a difference. So that was a little disappointing. And then also, even with the mattes, I really appreciate that having this grungy shade there, this really dark shade, and then, you know, this more of a brighter green. But this green being so close to this other green. Yes, they're different, but still when you use them in the look, that's where I kind of struggle to get creativity with my mattes. I'm not really sure what other shade they could have put there to continue getting, you know, some creativity. Maybe like a lime, really bright lime green, and then having, you know, this shade or this shade. And then the rest of the palette, you could have been able to use one or the other and just be able to change up the mattes that you put in your crease. And then I felt like I would have been a little bit more happy with the creativity I could have gotten from this palette. But as I said, I did the 3 looks and I feel like all of them for the most part just kind of look the same. I mean, maybe that's just me, maybe that's being nitpicky, and maybe if you're someone who doesn't mind that, doesn't mind the repetitiveness in a palette, you would absolutely love this, because like I said, the quality of these, I cannot fault them at all for the quality. The mattes blend so beautifully, they're so smooth, they blend like a dream, they're very easy to pick up on a brush, they're very easy to work together. I was very happy with it. And then the shimmers are again so smooth but so sparkly and so easy to pick up on a brush, which I was very happy with. Like, I had no issues. They're so smooth, I was like, oh no, is this gonna like not want to transfer onto a brush and then transfer onto my eyes? I had no issues using a brush and picking up either one of these. They're absolutely beautiful. But like I said, I wish one of them had just been a little more different. They look so different in the pan, but when you actually put them on your eyes, they honestly aren't that different, because when you go to use them, the brighter of the 2 greens, the darker of the 2 greens really lightens up, and then, you know, it just kind of ends up looking like the lighter tone color there. But overall, I really did enjoy it. It's definitely a palette I enjoy having, but I feel like it's a palette that, even though there's 6 colors in here, it's kind of like a one-trick pony for me. I feel like anytime I'm going to think to reach for, or I would want to reach for and create a look, the look I get is going to always kind of look the same, and that's where it's kind of just like a little disappointing. So hence why I couldn't put it super high in my countdown, even though I love the quality of it, and it's definitely kind of restores my faith in Colored Raine when it comes to their formula, because I think the last palette I tried from them before this was the Juicy Boost, which I wasn't the biggest fan of, either the shimmers or mattes. But trying this, I mean, I totally enjoyed it. Both shimmers and mattes, I thought they hit it out of the park with the formulas for them, so very happy for that. Okay, next up, these next two, this 4th spot and 3rd spot. I kept going back and forth with these so much, but I'm finally putting this one at number 4 because it's a smaller palette and it doesn't have as much, you know, different type of options you can get from it. We'll talk about it in a minute when I talk about the larger palette, but we're going to talk about the number 4 spot, which is Playing in Makeup by Yolondo. This is the Friends palette, #Friends palette. This palette is getting higher than the Colored Raine because I do feel like this gives me nice versatility. When it comes to just having 5 shades, I still feel like I could get different type of looks. I think I only have 3 looks to show you guys, but I know I used it one more time than that I totally forgot to take a picture of that day. So I did get to play around with this, and while yes, they all have that same kind of tone to them because it is a 5-pan palette, I was really happy to see that the mattes were very different. There's 3 mattes that are very different from each other, and then the 2 shimmers are very different from each other. One is more of like just a nice, very beautiful deep shimmer. It's not crazy sparkly, but it's more of, I would say, like a satin with a lot of sparkle reflect to it is how I would describe this shade. And this is a shade that I felt like I could use it on my outer corner or do a smoky eye and put it all over the lid, that type of thing. But this shimmer really just like stole the show. Oh my goodness, this shimmer is so beautiful. It's very soft. It reminds me of the LA Girl Main Stage Desert Dreams palette. If you guys remember that, those shimmers, they're so very soft, they're so very sparkly, they're so very metallic on your eyes. That's what this formula reminds me of, because it's just so very soft, but there's so much shine. It looks very metallic on the eyes. I love that shade. That was definitely my favorite shade in the palette. It was so beautiful. And then the mattes in this palette are gorgeous. Like, they blend so beautifully. They're so easy to work with. Like I said, I already told you, I like the color options. It allowed me to get very creative with where I place my mattes and what type of looks I was able to get. And yeah, overall, I was just very happy. Playing in Makeup by Yolanda is a brand that has been on my radar for a long time, and I'm finally trying more of her products, and I couldn't be more impressed with her formula when it comes to both mattes and shimmers. I was a little questionable on her shimmers last time I tried it, which I think was a pastel palette, but trying this line specifically, I am in the middle of trying a couple more of these 5-pan palettes. The shimmers have blown me away, and like I said, they remind me of that LA Girl formula, not quite so softly pressed, which is a good thing. They're a little bit more firmly packed so they don't get as messy, but the amount of just beautiful shine you get with them, and just how gorgeous they are to work with, and how shimmery and sparkly or metallic they look on your eyes, they are gorgeous. But like I said, I am putting it right here at number 4 because as much as I love the formula and it's so good, it is only 5, there are only 5 colors in here, so it's a little bit limiting. Like I said, I created 4 looks. They were different. They weren't super similar like I ran into with the Wealthy palette from Colored Raine, but it still was just a little bit limiting. So I decided to put it here right at number 4 before we get into the bigger palettes, because you guys know me, when it comes to palettes, the more creativity and the more different type of looks I can get with a palette, I just really do like and prefer that. But if you like small palettes, if you like this type of, 5-pan palettes that gives you a lot of variety, that has good mattes and good shimmers, I think it's called the, what is it, Infinity Collection? I can't even remember off the top of my head, but she has about like 12 or 13 of these 5-pan palettes, and I have 4 of them in my collection. I just picked 4 different colors up. I have been impressed with the formula of all of the mattes and shimmers across the board with this collection, so I would definitely highly recommend them. All right, number 3. This is the one I almost put below Playing in Makeup by Yolondo because I do feel like quality-wise, the Playing in Makeup by Yolanda is a better quality. However, this palette, for the price and how easy it is to get, it is a really nice formula, and the color options are just so much more. But this is the Profusion Desert Sage palette. I feel like I've been, raving about it. Anytime I talk about it, I'm like, I know everyone dogs it for the weird, packaging with it being in a flower, but y'all, it's a good palette. I created so many looks with this palette. I know I created about 2 or 3. I can't remember exactly. I created looks and I just didn't have time to take pictures with them, but I still created more just so you guys could see the versatility of this palette, and I thoroughly enjoyed all of the looks that I got. I got beautiful grungy green looks with this. I got really nice neutral and easy to wear looks with this. I got a blue and purpley type of look with this. It was just a really nice and versatile palette, and like I said, I know the shape is really odd, and that is kind of a bummer for me personally when I look at this palette, because these shimmers in the middle, they're a little bit difficult to get a brush in depending on how big my brush is. I'm not gonna lie. Or if I wanted to use my fingers like I did with some of them, my finger is like, kind of a little bit bigger than the pan, so it made it very tricky to really get in there. But that aside, if you don't mind the awkwardness of the shapes, the color story and the quality of this palette is very nice. The color story I think is very, very, very nice. I wouldn't exactly say it's like super desert sagey. I mean, maybe with this picture having all the purple outline, but like, it's got a lot of purple and blue and pink in here that don't really make me think of a desert, but I love these tones. I don't care if it's like about the theme. I just like the color story. I think they did a great job with that. The shimmers are a little hit or miss for me. Like, I really enjoyed these type of shimmers. They're very smooth. You guys are going to see in swatches. Some of them are very smooth and nice, but a couple of them are more of like, especially this pinky one, they're more of that kind of iridescent shimmer that just gives you a sheen. It's still really beautiful if you tap it over a look or if you tap it over a color and that type of thing, but it's just a little, there are different formulas, and I definitely much more prefer the more pigmented, just a really nice shimmer. They're nothing sparkly, they're nothing metallic, they're nothing like that, but they're just a very nice shimmer to use. And like I said, for getting it at the drugstore, I was able to pick this up at my Walmart. You get a lot of color options, you get a lot of different colors. I like that you can get neutrals with a little bit of purple pop in there. I thought it was really nice. There is a glitter in the middle, pressed glitter. I never used it, so I really can't say anything about that. I'm sorry. I know it's kind of bad for me reviewing this palette to totally ignore the glitter, but I haven't been in the mood for pressed glitters, so I honestly just kept brushing right past it. But there's so many other shades in here, I felt like I could give a pretty good review. Even if I can't speak to the glitter, I tried all the other shades in this palette. But anyway, moving to the mattes. The mattes are really nice. I was overall very happy for the most part. I felt like they were very, very pigmented, especially considering, like I said, the price tag with the brand. I was surprised how pigmented and nice this palette was when it came to the mattes. Like, they worked very well. Some of them are a little like more powdery, but they still build up and give you nice pigment. I do know when I did the blue purple look, which was over here using these shades, there's a ton of fallout. So I would say, do your eye makeup first and then do your face after that. But still, even though they're a bit powdery and, create a mess, they're still nicely pigmented. They still create really nicely pigmented looks. And in my opinion, they also blend really nicely and create a very nice blend when you're creating your looks. So like I said, it's not like, crazy amazing and like, Natasha Denona quality or anything, but knowing the price of this, knowing I was able to pick it up at Ulta, Profusion's such an affordable brand and available to so many people, or just, it's easy for people to get as opposed to like a lot of indie brands that you have to purchase only from their website. I was super impressed with this and thought it was a really nice, for the price, a really nice product. And if you like the color story and if you don't mind the weird packaging and the weird shape of the pans, I think it's worth picking up. I don't know. I know, like I said, this palette kind of got dragged through the mud when it was announced and shown on social media, and I do get why, because it's gonna be a bit bulky to store, and it was a little, annoying when I was creating looks and needing those shimmers in the tiny pans. But even with all of that against it, I couldn't deny that it had a really nice eyeshadow formula that I was really happy with and created a lot of really pretty looks with. We are getting towards the top. Number 2. Okay, for my number 2 palette, it's gonna go to Kailav Art Nouveau. I think I said that right. This palette right here, you guys know I always struggle, but this palette right here launched not too long ago, and it is just a very fun type of rainbow palette from Kailav Beauty. I was really excited specifically about the shimmers in this palette, and I think that's the aspect of this palette that stands out the most to me. I think the shimmers in this palette are beautiful and such a nice formula, so easy to work with. They pick up on a brush very nicely. They're nothing like super sparkly. They're just very nice pigmented shimmers. You guys can kind of see from the swatches just how easy they are to swatch, how creamy they are to touch, and just how nice and smooth they are when you actually, you know, use them on your eyes. And you guys will be able to see that in all the looks that I created with this palette. The darker mattes in here, I was very, very impressed with. I thought they were very nice. I thought they had a nice amount of pigment. They blended beautifully. I did have a little bit of an issue with the more lighter slash brighter of the matte. I felt like they were a little thin, and I think you can see that in the swatches of them when I swatch this palette out, in that you can see that they're just a little bit thin. They take a little bit of building up. They do build up, but just to throw it out there, it was definitely a formula that when I was creating looks, I'm using all these different deep tones. When I went to those, it was like, okay, I'm gonna have to spend some time kind of working this eyeshadow up to get the type of pigment that I want to see. I liked how many dark shades they had in here, and yeah, overall it was just a really fun palette. The color story was nice. I think that's my biggest thing, and my biggest reason I'm putting it so high is that the color story was so much fun. I can't remember how many looks I created, 6 or 7, and each and every one I was always just so excited to sit down and try to think of a different way to put looks together. And like I said, the matte formula, especially the darker tones, were very easy to work with, and the shimmers are just so nice. They're very nice and smooth. As I said, if you're looking for sparkly or a very special type of shadows, duochromes, or even like super metallic and wet looking on your eyes, that's not really quite how I would describe them, but they're just very nice pigmented smooth shimmers. So always, anytime I create a look, like the color on your lid was just so smooth, so pigmented and bright, that I was very happy with the type of look that I could get with this palette. I am seeing a little bit of hard pan on some of the shimmers, so if that's something that annoys you, maybe keep that in mind. I really only see it with the purple. Maybe I don't know, maybe my fingers were dirty when I went in here, but yeah, overall very, very happy with it. And staining, I don't think I got any staining from this palette. It was mainly with the graphic liner when I was using it with this palette. But yeah, another really nice release from Kailav Beauty. I was really excited about this release because the recent ones had been more of like that, you know, kind of rosy, more mauve-y kind of neutral tones when it came to their palette. So this one, with all this color and all this just like very bright rainbow, I was super excited. All right, it is time for my number 1 palette when it comes to this countdown. Oh my goodness, I can't believe we are here. I've been talking forever and getting more and more pregnant. It's getting more and more difficult to do these longer videos. But anyway, my number 1 palette that I tried recently, in the last 10 palettes that I tried, is the Nomad Paradise Islands palette, and it is what I have on my face today. I'm gonna hold it upside down. I know that might be annoying, but I'm holding it upside down so you guys don't get blinded by the mirror. But this palette was a lot of fun. I named this as one of my top spring palettes for 2022 because the colors in here are just my type of spring tones. Even this look that I have on today, like it's a darker, you know, for a pastel kind of springy look, but it's definitely in my eyes a very spring appropriate look. I like a lot of color when it comes to my spring looks, but I like them to still be like bright and vibrant and just kind of full of new life. I feel like is the theme for spring, at least for us here in Florida, that tends to be, you know, we go outside, it's not too hot, the birds are out, the grass is growing, things feel nice, the wind is blowing, you know, you're not melting yet with the humidity. And that's kind of what I thought of every time I created looks with this palette. Is it was just so bright, so fun, it's so vibrant, but nothing too dark in the outer corner because you just had this blue and this green, so it didn't get too deep. But yeah, overall, a fantastic palette. I love Nomad Cosmetics matte formula. It is very smooth, very soft, and very easy to work with, and especially their darker tones are just so intense and beautiful, but also their lighter tones have a nice amount of pigment, and the way that they blend and how soft they are and how beautifully pigmented they are, they make it very easy and user-friendly to work with. So I've always been a big fan of Nomad's mattes. This is no different. I wouldn't have mind 1 or 2 more mattes, honestly, because when you're looking at just the mattes, you got these blues, you got this pink, you got these greeny tones here with this kind of blue-green, and then the peach, these 2 peaches here. So, I mean, that's always my complaint. I feel like I'm always someone who's like, more shimmers than mattes, please, but still, I was really pleased with the ratio, and for, you know, creating so many looks, I didn't have to like repeat looks and whatnot when I was using this palette. So overall, even though, you know, there aren't as many mattes as I would like, I'm always up for more mattes, but still, I was very happy with the amount of mattes mattes and the amount of pigment that I got with the mattes, and overall very nice quality. And then the shimmers, I like the majority of the shimmers. There's these two shades here which are duochromes, and I actually used it for my highlight today. I just mixed the two together because it was a little too icy for my preferences when it came to just using, I think, this one by itself, because it just looked a little icy on my face. So I used a combination of the two, and I thought it was really pretty. It's more of a subtle kind of like not there but then there type of look, but I thought that was a nice kind of dual purpose with it. But these two shades are shades, like I said, they are duochrome. They're very pretty in that aspect, but they were only shades that I would want to use on my inner corner or on my cheek. They're just a little too smooth and almost like invisible for me to want to use on my eyes. And then they also had a type of shimmer which I would call this one and maybe even the pink a little bit, and maybe the green, but they're more of a soft type of sparkly type of shimmer. They're very pretty, but they're just more, I don't know, muted and not as like wow in your face metallic as I kind of prefer for my eyes when I'm creating looks. They're still very pretty. It's more of like a very, you know, if you like that iridescent look to your eyes, or if you like that kind of barely there kind of shimmer shine to your eyelid, you'd probably like that type of formula. But for me personally, I tended to use those kind of just as those in-between shades. But then the shimmers that really stood out to me that I loved is definitely this blue over here as well, this green over here, and the orange that I used on my inner half of my lid. Those are a lot more pigmented. They have a still sparkle to them, but when they go on, they have more of a metallic just intensity to them than the other shades do. So there's a couple different formulas when it comes to the shimmers in this palette, so I hope that was kind of helpful to kind of go through really quickly and share with you guys the differences. But for me personally, of course, I'm sure this comes as no surprise, my favorites were this blue and this green. They were so beautiful. They were so easy to pick up. I mean, all the shades in here, I would say in general, are very easy to pick up with a brush. It just depends on the type of shimmer it is, how much it shows up. But these two were so easy to pick up on a brush, and they just, you know, they just stand out so much. They're so very beautiful. So yeah, overall, that's kind of just a quick wrap on all of the formulas and whatnot in this palette. But overall, I thought the color story was really fun, especially to come out in the spring of 2022. I think it's a perfect time to come out. Everyone's kind of gearing up to, you know, go on the summer vacations, or just, you know, we're done with the winter and we want to have some nice bright colors on our face, and this palette definitely gives you all of the bright colors. So overall, I was really happy, and when I was looking at all the palettes I had to rank today, all the 10 palettes that I had to rank, I was like, this one's going at number 1 just because of how happy it makes me when I create looks with it. Alright, so we have come to the end of another Palette Palooza ranking video. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and I hope the reviews that I gave you for the 10 palettes that we talked about were helpful. As I always try to remind you guys, these are just my experiences with the palettes, and a lot of the ranking for these palettes just comes from my preferences. So I hope if you're someone who came to this video to get some reviews, you paid more attention to the reviews and the information I was giving about the quality of the palette, quality of the mattes, that type of thing, and not so much on the ranking, because like I said, the ranking is just more so for a fun way to give it to you guys, a fun way to you know, structure the video, and just a way to kind of show my preferences when I'm looking back at the 10 palettes to see which ones stood out to me, which ones I just enjoyed more, which ones I had more fun with, that type of thing. But yeah, with all that said, as always, I love to hear if you guys tried any of these palettes that I featured in today's video. Let me know down below in the comments, as always, if you have any of these palettes and how you like them. Of course, we can disagree, so if I put one of the palettes that you really love at the bottom, please don't take it personally. That's just our different preferences or different ways of doing eyeshadow or whatnot, but you're welcome to share that down below in the comments. I always love to hear from you guys. And yeah, as always, I'm over on Instagram, LadyKatie92 over there. I post reels, up close eye pictures, all that sort of thing. So if you want to continue getting daily content from me, I'm over there. Been posting 2 times a day recently. Don't know how long I'll be keeping that up, but been posting over there more. And with all that said, that's gonna do it for me. I'll see you guys very soon in my next video. Bye guys.